Hi, I'm Dylan Cox and welcome to the 4th edition of my weekly video boxing blog for Secondsout.com. Firstly, an apology to say sorry that there wasn't an episode last week. In my excitement, I'd forgotten that I was going on holiday, so I wasn't able to record the preview and predictions for the Geale fight and the Kovalev fight card in Cardiff. So apologies for that, but I'm back now, back in a different room in my house. This is the new studio for now, a bit of a mess next door, so I thought I'd pop into the dining room. Thanks for everybody for the comments on the last video and for the suggestions for the show. I have chosen a name from the suggestions. I'll reveal that later in the show, and I've got a little prize. But I'd also like to say thanks for all the comments and the insight. You guys are obviously real fans, you know what you're talking about when it comes to boxing, and I really appreciate the dialogue that we've had and some of the suggestions that you gave me for things to talk about. Interestingly, the Amir Khan's former manager Asif Ali going to work with the Furies is quite an interesting point, and thank you for flagging that up. And I was just doing a little bit of research into that, and it's true, those guys knew each other for quite a while. And people might think, well, what can Valley bring to Team Fury? I don't know exactly what, but you've got to remember that Valley's worked a lot with Khan through some big deals, negotiating with the likes of Reebok, Network Rail even, sponsored Amir to a certain extent and helped him with his gym, with some funding, etc. So all the sponsorship deals, all the deals with networks and stuff, Valley's had that experience. So he's quite an experienced guy. I don't know how savvy he is, I don't know how proficient he is, but he's obviously got the skills. He's based in Bolton, they're in Manchester. I don't see how it can harm them. So it's obviously a good link up for Team Fury. And Mick Hennessy can concentrate on the promoting side. Now they've got somebody who can concentrate on the commercial business side, I guess. So we'll be talking about that fight in a few more episodes, because that's not long around the corner. But let's start with the big news of the week. It's a couple of days late, I know, and you've probably watched other blogs and videos online talking about this, but I just thought I'd weigh in with how I thought the fights went. The Kovalev versus Cleverly Bill in Cardiff was a great card. We saw Enzo McAnally on the undercard there, boxing over Mackenzie and stopping him. I'll be honest, I didn't want to see McAnally continue to fight after some of the knockouts he's had. He's been knocked out very badly, he's been stopped quite a few times, and I think he's been a world champion, he's earned money out of the sport, he's an articulate guy, he could work well in broadcasting, he's done some stuff for Box Nation, and I just didn't really want to see him keep going into tough fights, and it was a hard fight against Mackenzie. I can't stop a person from wanting to earn a living, it's his job, etc. But from a personal standpoint, I didn't want to see him in the ring. But it was a tremendous fight, and congratulations to Enzo, and whatever he chooses to do, he's had a fantastic career. Stephen Smith on the undercard, great finish against Gary Buckland, a really good uppercut. And just proof that Joe Gallagher, again, he's showing that his fighters can adapt, they can box, and he boxed beautifully, Smith, and he landed that peach of a shot. And I'm pleased for Joe Gallagher, and I'm pleased for Steve Smith, and it shows that the loss against Selby, didn't paint him in his true light, and he is a class operator at domestic and potentially even European level. But the headline fight, Nathan Cleverly taking on Sergei Kovalev, I still haven't got it right, I don't think, but the Russian meant business. You saw him at the weigh-in, and you just saw his whole demeanour on the fight night, cold, clinical, but very assured, confident, technically very skilled, but every shot was just like a thudding blow. I think he is the definition of a heavy-handed fighter, a bit like how Matt Macklin described Golovkin after he fought him. He's not a one-punch knockout artist, but every punch that lands is like a thudding blow. You could hear it, and even through Nathan's guard, when he had his hands up high, he was red and sore on the face from the shots that were getting through. And I loved how he mixed the shots up, Kovalev, and whether it was a cuffing blow that first caused the damage, he just followed up with instinct but with poise as well. He didn't just go crazy on Nathan, and Nathan wasn't really at the races, and I think people who say that he fought the wrong fight are probably correct. He should have boxed him off a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's in Nathan's nature to want to fight that kind of fight. He's like a bit like Carl Froch, has become a bit enamoured with his own chin, and believing that he can take a few to land a few, and boxing is the art of hitting and not getting hit. Yeah, it's an entertainment business, and Nathan's rarely in a dull fight because of that willingness to go forward. But I've always thought he fights wrong for his style. He's quite a tall guy, he fights quite hunched up, and he throws these short hooks, but he could do boxing a bit more taller and a bit longer, and then taking it into the later rounds. But he got goaded into a bit of a war, and he came off second. Kovalev is a good fighter. I mean, we didn't know much about him before we went in there. You know, yes, we watched a couple of videos on YouTube, etc. I'm sure some people have followed his career intensely, but for the broader fan, I think, you know, we knew his record. We'd seen him what he'd done to Campillo. We'd seen that he's a big puncher, but could he hack it in the hometown of a world champion against a young, relatively fresh fighter? No one really knew the answer to that, and the answer was yes, he could, and he could in very clinical fashion. So Kathy Duva, who works with Kovalev, will be very excited because she'll be on the phone to HBO and they'll be looking at some big fights over in the States. That's the reason Nathan took that fight, I think, because being him got him some recognition on HBO, would get him some airtime, and would get him in the big fights that he wanted against the likes of Hopkins, Stevenson, Dawson even, or Cloud, you know, and unification fights, and that's what he wanted to be. Even Shumenov, people like that, he could have been fighting if he'd have beat this guy. So it was a tough fight, it's a tough ending, and it's sad now to think that Nathan's even considering retirement. Totally his decision, but he'll take some time out and think about it. For those that are calling for him to change coach, I think that's premature, and I think he needs to think about really what he wants to be doing and how he's going to be doing it. And there's always a call for people to change coach when they lose. It just happens, and you know, there's always a coach of the month or coach of the week that's great. You know, all of the big coaches have had it. All the trainers, they've been, you know, go with this guy. He's the right guy at the moment. Go with Buddy McGirt. When he was with Gatti, he can change you from a brawler to a boxer. But Gatti never looked that great with Buddy McGirt. Buddy McGirt, I mean, I think he's a good trainer, but I mean, I never trust a guy who trains with jeans and a Bluetooth headset in and does the pads. It just looks a bit like you're sort of half, you know, doing something else. So I don't, you know, Buddy McGirt's a great fighter. Don't get me wrong, but you know, and then Freddie Roach has been a great trainer, but then he has a few losses, and then people go to Manny Stewart was a great trainer, but you know, Miguel Cotto didn't work out with Stewart. And, you know, Cotto's a good example. He's gone around the houses with the trainers. Matthew Mackman's gone around the houses with the trainers. I think there's so many variables in finding a right trainer for you, and I think so much of it isn't just how good a technical coach the coach is and how you know, how good they are at getting you fit, etc. I think it's actually a personal connection between one person to another, and do you trust that person? Do you get on with them? And can you listen to them when you need to listen to them? And I think that's what Nathan needs to find. Don't just go with somebody because, you know, he's the trainer du jour. I don't even know if that's the right phrase. And go with someone because it's the right fit for you. Talk is that he gets on very well with Adam Booth when they were out in Denmark when he was sparring Kessler and George Groves was out there. So, you know, watch this space. And there was one last fight involving a British fight that actually took place in Atlantic City against an Australian that really caught the eye of the general public in Britain, I think, and that was Darren Barker taking the IBF middleweight title away from Daniel Geale. Now, we talked about these two knowing each other for a long time, been around each other since the amateurs, Commonwealth Games, etc. And Barker, you know, maybe not realising his potential, he was sort of well touted when he was younger. He came through as Commonwealth gold medalist, turned pro with Hennessy. Tony Sims was his trainer, still is, and he, you know, he'd gone up to European British honours, you know, fairly smoothly. And then the injuries came, and then came the sort of the fights falling through and stuff. And I think he became a little bit disillusioned with the sport, Barker. And although he'd won British, Commonwealth, and European titles, I think he probably thought the world title would elude him. And when I worked for the ABA a couple of years ago, this is going back a couple of years, yeah, I was a development officer, and I'd help set up projects in schools, get young people into boxing via non-contact boxing, and then link them with a local club if they wanted to take it up properly. And I worked with local clubs, etc., to get them funding to help grow. And I had a phone call one day from a guy, and he was like, "Oh, Dylan, can you help me? I work with, or I know a guy called Darren Barker. He's a professional boxer. He wants to do some coaching in schools because he just wants to keep busy, etc. Can you help him?" I was like, "Well, of course, I knew Darren Barker. I was a big fan of his. Have been for a long time, since the Real Class of 2002 or whatever, when, you know, Hennessy was promoting back on the BBC." And so I phoned him up the next day. I said, "Darren, you know, how can I help?" And he was like, "Yeah," and he just seemed a bit downbeat. And he won't remember this. He won't remember talking to me, I'm sure. But he just seemed about downbeat, and he wanted to go into schools and just do some coaching to keep him busy. I don't know if it was because the Macklin fight had fallen through again because he had a bad hip and he just needed stuff to do and take his mind off stuff, or he needed a bit of extra cash. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that. But it just sounded the kind of guy that was like not in love with the sport, you know. And funny how things turned out, because a couple of months later he left Hennessy. He got with Eddie Hearn. He had a shot at Sergio Martinez. But if you saw the documentary on Sky on Ringside with Darren Barker, the special, great edit on that. There's a really nice documentary. Not too keen on the U2 music at the end, but apart from that, really good insight to Tony Sims as well. But he said in that basically he took the Martinez fight for money, and I think that was him cashing out of the sport because he was falling apart. His hips, whatever, they were all sort of deteriorating, and I think he probably just thought, big world title fight, don't worry about it if I win it. It's the best guy in the division. If I lose it, it's no shame. Big payout, and I can walk away from the sport. Funny how much difference a couple of years made. Changes his training setup slightly. He's more into yoga, things that are less high impact on his body. Gets refocused under Eddie Hearn as his promoter, gets more opportunities, and there he is ripping the title away from Geale. And I mean, I'm not going to break down the fight round by round or anything like that, but you could see in his when you get knocked down like that shot to the solar plexus, it would have knocked out a lot of middleweights. I'm not saying it's the best, most devastating body shot in the world, but he was down, he was out, and his legs were kicking the ground. But something, the memory of his brother, the thought of his daughter, all culminated into getting back up and getting back into that round at the end of it as well, firing back. And you just think sometimes you can get disillusioned with boxing as a fan or as a boxer yourself or as a journalist, etc. But those are the moments that you think to yourself, this sport can just outdo any other sport, because he was on the brink, like the end. It's not like in football where you're a goal down and you lose 1-0, because there's no physical impact. But he was, physically he was out. He was he couldn't catch his breath, and then suddenly, he's turning the fight around. He's, I think Geale won the last round clearly, and one judge gave it to Barker. That could have impacted the score, obviously. But on the whole, I'm not going to complain. I think Darren Barker deserves to be world champion, and nobody deserves it more than him. So congratulations to Darren. Geale will come again, definitely, I think, and he'll either get exercise rematch or he'll be in line when Barker fights Sturm and whoever wins that fight. So Barker's got some options, but I think in the short term he's got to either face Geale again and then Sturm, or Sturm and then Geale. So his next couple of fights are pretty much sewn up, and there's not really a way around that unless he ditches his belt. Martin Murray would be a great fight for him, a fight that I think Murray would win. I think he's just too strong. I think with Barker now, the key is that the top of the mountain for him? Is that, like, he's won his world title, no one can take that away from him? Or is it unification, big domestic showdowns? Or it can go one or two ways. Sometimes once you reach the top of the mountain, you just, that's it. You haven't got the desire to keep going. But hopefully this is just the start of him engaging in some of the big middleweight names. Would I fancy him against Murray? Probably not. Would I fancy him against Golovkin? Probably not. And would I fancy him against Kid Chocolate? Maybe. But Sturm's even a tough fight for me, and Sturm's on the slide a little bit. So it's interesting to see where Darren Barker goes from here. But for me, that was just a magical night. And congratulations to Eddie Hearn as well for getting this guy that opportunity. People may say that he didn't get it at home, etc. But for me, Darren Barker deserved that world title more than anybody. He's British, European, Commonwealth world champion. I just want to say, there's a little bit of news with Secondsout.com. We're going to be trying a new format. I'm going to continue to do the blog on a weekly basis, but we're going to be trying a new format in that we're going to be doing hopefully a monthly sort of wrap-up preview show with myself and the editor of Secondsout.com, and so keep tuned for that. Hopefully the first one of those will be out in the next couple of weeks, where we'll be discussing the new season coming up. So that's pretty much it for this blog. So thanks again for all the comments on the blog and the suggestions for a title. I've gone with Mowgli77's suggestion of Secondsout weekly wrap-up with Dylan Cox. So that's going to be the new title of the show, and Mowgli, I've got a little prize for you. It's actually, I don't know if it's much of a prize, to be honest, so just write in the comments if you don't want this, or tweet me, because you probably don't. It's just a press pass from Derek Chisora versus Malik Scott. that I can give away that you may be interested in if you're not. Also, I want to say thanks to Mubashir as well, Mohammed, hope I got that right, for all your dialogue and interesting sort of leads for stuff to talk about. It's really good. I like that we can communicate that stuff. You guys are obviously big fans and you know what you're talking about, and it's really interesting to hear what you've been hearing on the grapevine, on Twitter, in the news and stuff, and your thoughts about stuff. I've tried to focus the blog mainly on happenings in the UK, because if I talked about all the American stuff, it'd just go on forever and I think you'd probably be bored. But I would be interested in anybody tweeting me or commenting on what you'd like to talk about in the next few blogs. As I say, we're going to be talking about the big fights in the new season coming up, and hopefully I'll have some decent prizes for you in the future for any of the competitions that we have. So thanks again for tuning. Don't forget to like, share and comment, and tweet at me at Dylan Cox Boxing or at Secondsout Live, and we'll be seeing you next week on the weekly wrap up. And stay safe, fight fans. Enjoy the rest of the summer, what's left, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks.